What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It is an even colder day today than my last video, and hopefully I don't sound too muffled. If I do, I'll try and edit the video and the audio after I record it. But it is chilly. It's about like, I don't know, 35 degrees. Actually, it might even be colder. And so today, what I want to talk about is an update on my Meelod e-bike, the moped-style e-bike DK300 Max. I did a review on this bike a few months ago, and I just wanted to give you guys an update on how it's been since then. I've put a couple hundred miles on it, and I want to just tell you guys how it's been. I even let my brother-in-law borrow it for a little bit. He rode it around for a while, and he loved it. Although he did take a spill on it. It wasn't too bad. Did you fall? Oh, shit. You alright?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh my god.
Holy crap.
Oh, I didn't get that on camera.
Damn.
We fixed everything just fine. And side note, I am trying a new camera angle a little bit higher on the handlebars so you guys can see more of what I see and less of handlebars. Because personally, if I'm watching a riding video, I don't want to just stare at a handlebar the whole time. I know some of my older videos are like that because I used to record from my smartphone strapped to my chest. I want to have you guys see what I see as I'm riding. And if you guys do hear a little bit of scraping from the brakes, that's something that we're going to talk about also. It's not a terrible thing, but I'll tell you guys what's going on there. So let me just quickly list off the pros and cons of this bike. The pros, obviously, dual motors. Gives you lots of power. I'm climbing this hill right now at 20 miles an hour. That's great. That's fantastic, right? You get dual motors, lots of power, lots of torque. Stock, this thing is pretty much as fast as the stock wired Freedom. It's obviously a little bit more money because it has more battery, more motors, but it's just as fast as the wired Freedom. So that's number one. Number two, it has dual batteries. Two 20 amp hour batteries. That's a lot of battery, guys. That's going to give you a total of 40 amp hours of battery. Not a lot of bikes have that much battery, guys. Even the Aerial Rider Grizzly does not give you that much battery. So that's a huge plus of this bike. You get the two motors, the two batteries. Number three, and this is, I know subjective, but for me, I think I really like how this bike looks, that stretched out rear swing arm in the back. I know the other Meelod bikes, and a lot of other bikes have that triangle shape frame, but I really like how this one is stretched out, and it gives it like a motorcycle look. And so that's a huge thing for me. I've gotten a lot of compliments on this bike. Oh, this bike looks awesome. My brother-in-law has gotten a lot of compliments on this bike as well. So this bike definitely looks the part. It looks awesome, and it's a huge selling point in my opinion. Number four is the dual suspension. The shock on the back is so cushy and comfy. It's got a lot of travel. The front shocks are great as well. Everything is adjustable. So this is a very comfortable ride, and it has the moped style tires in the front. If you air them down a little bit, man, this thing drives like a Cadillac. It's great. And it's got the power too, and it's got the range. So those are four things that I really like about this bike. Now let's go ahead and list the cons. Some of these things you can change, some of them you can't. Some of them might be a big deal, and some of them aren't really a big deal. Let's start with the one that is a big deal, and that is the consequence of having all of those features that I listed earlier, which is the weight. This is a steel frame bike with two motors, two batteries. It's going to be a heavy bike, guys. This is a heavy bike. It's no joke. Trying to maneuver this thing around is quite challenging. So if you aren't a very capable person, if you, for whatever reason, aren't strong enough to lift a lot of weight, this might not be the bike for you. Even lifting it on a rear rack on your car, for example, is a lot of work. And I have taken this thing on a rear rack before. I mean, I'm a young man. I lift weights regularly, and so I'm pretty strong. I can lift mostly whatever I want. So for me, it's not an issue, but it's still a pain in the ass. It sucks lifting a heavy bike if you don't have to. I'd rather a bike obviously be lighter, not heavy. So that's one of the biggest cons about this bike, is that it is fairly heavy. The second con, which isn't a big deal because you could just get a bunch of these and easily not have it be a big deal, are the brake pads. So one of the things, you guys are going to see this in a second, one of the things that I replaced on this bike are the brake rotors. And I went from 160 millimeter rotors, which this bike had, and I installed 203 millimeter rotors. And upon closer inspection, the 160 millimeter rotors are actually thicker than normal rotors. They're on the thicker side, which is very good because that's going to help with heat dissipation. When brake rotors get hot, your brakes don't really work all that well and it wears out your brakes faster. But they are still 160 millimeters in diameter, and so larger diameter rotors are going to help leverage-wise in terms of stopping you better. At least initially, right? You'll get that initial brake a lot better. Your stopping ability will be much better in terms of when you're quickly braking. Let's say something jumps out in front of you, your stopping ability will be better. The thing is, I was looking at these calipers and they look like normal, e-bike calipers. They're quad piston, which is nice. And the brake pads wore out very quickly. And I think that's a combination of just this bike being heavier and the brake pads themselves. I believe they are on the thinner side. The ones that come stock with this bike, they look like they were almost on the thinner side. The reason I say that is because I bought new brake pads and they almost didn't fit. So I bought new brake pads and they were thick. They're thick brake pads to the point where even with the thinner rotors that I put on, they almost didn't fit, and so they're rubbing a lot. And so I'm still honestly playing with these brakes and adjusting them back and forth, trying to wear them down just a little bit so they don't rub anymore. So if you guys hear some kind of rubbing from the brakes, that's what's going on. However, if you want to sidestep all those issues, just get some extra brake pads from Meelod. They're cheap. Get a bunch of them and you'll be all set. You'll just have to swap your brake pads a little bit more than normal. Again, I don't know why these brake pads wore out so quickly, but I just want to give you guys all the info as to why this bike is good and bad. Next thing we're going to talk about was the seat. So I did replace the seat on this bike. I'm going to go through all the things I replaced in a second, but the stock seat is not made for long distance. The batteries are made for long distance. Obviously, you get two batteries, two 20 amp hour batteries. That will give you the ability to go a long way. But the seat sucks. It's not comfortable for long trips. For a short trip, it's fine. It's a good looking seat, but for long trips, it will start to hurt your butt. You're gonna have a bad day and you are going to feel that long distance bike ride the next day, maybe the day after, depending on how fat your butt is, how accustomed you are to riding these bikes. You're going to feel sore the next day. And that's not something that you wanna feel. I'll leave a link to the seat that I used in this video, and I'm going to show you guys in a second what I used. I know I keep saying that, but I just want to get all this information out first. By the way, if it looks like I'm going in circles, that's because I am. I'm just kind of riding around, cruising around, still adjusting this bike. I wanted to make this video talking about what I think about it. So we don't have any particular destination to go. We're just cruising around. Honestly, I don't even know where I am. I'll have to throw the GPS up later. The next thing that's not really that big of a deal, but it is what it is the gearing on the bike. This bike does come with 7 gears, which with the stock chain ring that you get in the front, it's kind of useless. You start ghost pedaling after 20. Although these moped style e-bikes really aren't made for pedaling to begin with, just because of the frame geometry. They're not good for pedaling, they're not comfortable. This bike still comes with 7 gears, and I think just kind of unnecessary. I keep this bike in gear 7 at all times anyways. I would like for it to just come with 1 gear. That would be nice, similar to the Ride 1-Up Rev 1. They just have 1 single gear in their bike because they know these moped style e-bikes, nobody's gonna pedal them. Just throw 1 gear on there. You don't need gears on this. It just adds complexity and weight to an already heavy bike. It just gives you something that you're just not even gonna use. It's like someone giving you a fur coat in the summertime, saying, hey, here you go. Just in case, here you go. You're probably not gonna use that fur coat. Yes, there's a slight chance you will. Maybe for whatever reason your batteries die, you use all your battery and you need to pedal. Maybe there's some crazy hill that you have to climb, but for the most part you probably will not be using those gears. Alright, so let's go to this dead end right here and let me show you guys what I did to this bike. Alright guys, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So as you can see, I put 203mm brake rotors on this. I wanted bigger rotors to get the leverage to stop this bike faster if I need it. So I definitely did that first and foremost. I did throw some new pedals on there with that red accent because I wanted it to match this little red piece right here. I think it looks cool. It's matching. There's that front brake also, that 203mm rotor. They do look cool as well. Something else I did was I threw a bag up here, and in there is a spare tire and a spare tire. In there is a spare tire tube and a toolkit in case I break down. And this is the seat that I threw on. This is from Go Power Sports, I believe. It's a small seat. It was really tough to find a small seat to fit this bike, but I did find it, and it was under $100. So a lot of seats that you get, a lot of custom seats, are insanely expensive. They're like over $200, but this one, I think it was like 80 bucks. And I'll show you guys a quick video of how I installed it. I'm gonna make a YouTube short about this also, but the installation was super simple. Just need some basic tools, and so far this seat is much more comfortable than the old one. I think it looks pretty cool also. Something else I did was I added a slightly larger freewheel. I had a larger freewheel kicking around, and so now I can pedal up to 25 miles an hour before I ghost pedal instead of 20 miles an hour. Another reason why I had to switch this is because if you remember, I mentioned my brother-in-law, he took a little tumble in this bike. That chain ring actually was bent just a little bit, and so I had this kicking around. I threw it on there. And what else I did is I threw some more chain links on here, and now everything fits and it shifts perfectly. And if you notice, these little guys right here, these are little chain guides that I added. I use these on my other bikes, but these are cool because even with the stock front chain ring, the chain rubs on the fender and it makes noise when it's in the biggest cog in the back. And so I added these little guides to keep the chain away from the fender so it stops the noise. On top of that, I added it down here to prevent chain dropping. And so the chain is much more stable now. None of this would be an issue if I just had one gear in the back. It wouldn't be an issue at all. And that's another reason why I think they should just get rid of the gears in this bike, especially because it has two motors. You're not going to pedal this, honestly. And just have one chain, one gear, and that's it. Something else that I did with this bike is the metal fenders, they rattled, especially the back one. The motors vibrate a little bit, as does any motor. And so this fender rattled a lot. But the way I fixed it is I added essentially rubber washers everywhere. On every contact point where this thing screws in, except down here, I added rubber washers, and that helped a lot. These are just kind of custom made washers, but you can get some of your own as well. I added them everywhere the fender screws in, and that stopped the rattling. And so that was an easy fix, thankfully. Besides that, I think this bike is perfect. I think it looks really cool. It's a sharp looking bike. I'm not going to change anything else on it. I'm not going to do any power mods or anything like that, because if I add it, let's say I did a shunt mod to this, it would just use up the batteries a lot more. It wouldn't really go all that much faster because the motors top out at 36 miles an hour anyways if they're free spinning, and this bike is a 34 35 mile an hour bike, so it wouldn't really go that much faster. I think the acceleration is really good on this bike as well, so it's perfect as it is. I think it's an awesome looking bike. I think it's a sharp looking bike. I would recommend it, but definitely take heed of those cons that I mentioned, because there are pros and cons to everything. So that's it for today, guys. I wanted to talk to you about the updates I've done to this Meelod DK300 Max. I think it's a pretty awesome bike. There are some cool things about this bike. There are some small uncool things about this bike. But with a little bit of tweaking and adjustment, it is an awesome little e-bike. It's actually a big e-bike. And I would recommend it, especially if you value what your e-bike looks like. And this thing looks awesome. Look at it. It looks so good. It's one of the best looking e-bikes, honestly, I've ever seen. And so just for that, I think it's worth it. Plus you get the dual motors, the dual batteries. That's it for today, guys. Until next time.